Good afternoon, everyone, or early evening. This is Heather Murphy with the City of Phoenix Street Transportation Department, and we are here tonight to talk about the Fillmore Street project or study between 7th Avenue and Central Avenue, which we'll elaborate in a short bit, has been slightly expanded to First Street. Tonight, we do have this meeting offered in Spanish through our Spanish language listen line. I'd like to introduce Albert Granillo to introduce the Spanish language line.
Si usted desea escuchar la reunión en español, por favor marque el 602-534-1000 y luego el número de la reunión, que es el 57271 y el símbolo de número. Thanks, Heather.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Albert, for being available for this meeting. I did put that information in the chat in case anybody needs it. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce the people that will be with you tonight, presenting and answering your questions. Panelists, if you'll introduce yourself in the order your names appear.
My name is Ruben Lawley. I'm the Deputy Director for Design and Construction Management for Street Transportation Department.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jorge Riveros. I am the Deputy Director for the Traffic Services Division here at the Street Transportation Department.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carl Langford. I'm a Traffic Engineering Supervisor for this project.
Hello, my name is Wendy Phelps. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner with the consulting firm working on this project, Tool Design.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'd like to give everybody an overview of our agenda tonight. The items marked in yellow are some interactive opportunities that we have to hear from you directly. We're obviously working on the introduction. We'll have a quick audience poll. We'll review the project area and process, provide a summary of public input and recommendations, and we'll put Wendy back on here to give a more detailed overview of the design options. And then we'll get your community perspective and answer questions. So if you're not familiar with our WebEx interface, we have a little tutorial slide here. The most important thing is this diagonal yellow arrow near the bottom that opens up the little chat box. That's the little bubble in the bottom corner. There will be two opportunities to provide input in the chat or the question and answer section. We will monitor the chat and store that for later, but we will be focusing tonight on the question and answer section. So that's where if you have a question for the project team, please go ahead and put it there. We will be unmuting people toward the end. I should also say that this meeting is being recorded and will be available and posted on our website by mid next week because Monday is a holiday for us. So with that, Ruben, would you like to give an introduction, please?
Of course. Thank you for attending this public meeting about Fillmore Street. We are in the very early stages of a study as part of an overall effort to establish a safer east-west route through downtown for people who walk or ride bicycles. We are exploring options along Fillmore Street and are bringing you a follow-up to our February 8th public meeting. Thanks to the efforts of you and your neighbors, our team got quality feedback on what you would like to see us do along Fillmore between 7th Avenue and Central Avenue. Our team will recap the options presented in February and then share with you how your input helped select a recommended option for Fillmore Street. With that, I'll turn back over to our team to continue.
Thank you, Ruben. I'm going to go ahead and introduce and do this part. I'm helping out the project manager who could not be here tonight. So I will do my best to substitute for her. On this slide, you will see the yellow box highlighting the study area. This originally was comprised of 7th Avenue to Central, but we saw an opportunity on that gap between Central and First Street to extend the study area, and we're able to do so. The green lines you see here show connectivity to already existing bike lanes. So this project would fill in an important gap in the downtown transportation network for people on foot or on bicycle. And next, I'd like to go ahead and open that first poll and ask you how you relate to the project area. Our first question here, let's see, it did not, hang on, it didn't clear out the responses. Let me just deploy this one more time. Okay, team, are you seeing the polling questions?
It appears closed on my end, Heather.
Okay, let me reshare. Okay, bear with me here. This is not my first rodeo, but my, let's see, open poll. Okay, let's see. It is showing it in progress. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate your patience there. So the choices for the poll questions are, I live near the project area, I use this street to commute or do errands, or I work at a local business, none of the above, and other. For that, you can just answer in the chat box for us. And we appreciate your input. We're at about 50% of responses so far, and it looks like we are joined tonight by people who live near the project area, who use this street to commute or run errands. A few people who work at a business within the study area, and a couple of no answers. So the majority of you, actually, this mirrors the survey results that we'll explore in a minute, but the majority of you do live near the project area and use this street to commute. A couple of people who work at or own a business in the area. So recapping the time frame for this particular study, we did initial outreach and fact-finding in fall 2023 through spring 2024. Today, we're at the second bullet here, the second arrow. We're at the second public meeting. The plan is to complete the study by early 2025 and then seek funding to enter the design phase. Thank you. So to recap where this fits in the whole process, again, we're over here on the left side of this slide. We're in the planning and pre-design phase where we're looking at what problems need to be solved, what is possible. And then we're presenting tonight concepts that reflect community input. We're not yet into design or construction. So that just gives a little basis for where we are. How did we get here? This project relates to and ties to a number of studies that have occurred and planning that's occurred for the downtown area as far back as 2010. And going through, for example, the Walkable Urban Code, Reinvent Phoenix, the Downtown Transportation Plan update in 2020, and then more recently, the dedication of the Hans Hughes Memorial Bikeway on Fillmore Street last year. So there are a number of studies that this project relates to. And in February, we brought you 4 options. The 4 options consisted of bike lanes with some on-street parking, protected bike lanes, a 2-way protected bike lane, and no changes. And you'll probably want a little primer on what those actually looked like. So we're going to walk you through that briefly. Option A is bike lanes with some on-street parking where it could be accommodated, as depicted over here on the left side of the slide by the dark red burgundy car. Option B is to have a protected bike lanes on both sides with no on-street parking. Option C is a two-way protected bike lane with no on-street parking. And there's always an option D, which is the no build option. So looking at the community survey results and people's connection to Fillmore, very similar to tonight's first poll, the majority of the people that responded to our survey, and we had close to 200 responses, they live near the project area to 54%, or they use the street to commute, work, run errands, or access business and recreational activities in the area. That came in the largest percentage at 67%, very much mimicking the results we saw tonight. When we asked in the survey the priority question about how people think about transportation along Fillmore Street and ranking their priorities, these are ranked in response order. So preventing collisions that could injure or kill people is number one. Giving everyone a comfortable option for using streets, whether they're walking, driving, biking, or taking transit, was the second most favored response. Building a green and sustainable transportation system. And then you see the other responses here on the slide. And then the final question that we asked in the survey before some open-ended questions was thinking about your priorities for Fillmore Street in this corridor. Which option do you think would best suit your community? And overwhelmingly, people selected the two-way bikeway with no on-street parking. And if you look at the previous slide, providing on-street parking was definitely not a priority of the people that responded to our survey. And we had a couple of people who said, don't make any changes and keep Fillmore Street as it is today. So looking again at the recommended option is the two-way protected bike lane with no on-street parking. And obviously the landscaping is representative of what could be possible in this conceptual stage only. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Wendy Phelps to talk in detail about the proposed design.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather. So we're going to be looking at the corridor. We're going to start on the west end and head east, and I'll do my best to orient you to these slides that you see on your screen. To start, I'd like to talk about the intersection at 7th Avenue and Fillmore. The main road on your screen right now is 7th Avenue, and north is to the right-hand side of your screen. West Fillmore Street is down at the bottom of this image here, a little off-center, and we're looking at that crossing that currently has a pedestrian hybrid beacon. In our previous meetings and public outreach, we heard a lot about this crossing and how unsafe it feels for people crossing the street at this intersection due to the conflicts with turning vehicles, people turning off of Fillmore to go south on 7th, and people as well as people turning off of 7th onto Fillmore. We heard several comments asking for a full signal at this intersection, and that was an option that we considered in our study. However, that gets complicated because West Fillmore jogs to the north here at this intersection, so we'd really kind of have to signalize two intersections. It'd be a very expensive and complicated project, so we wanted to also look at what we could do with the existing infrastructure that's there to improve the safety at this intersection. So the concept that we came up with would restrict left turns off of Fillmore to go south on 7th Avenue. It would add medians near the crossing to highlight the presence of the crossing. We would maintain the existing pedestrian hybrid beacon. And we'll talk a little bit more about the bikeway as we get onto the Fillmore corridor. But here, in order to connect over to Taylor Street and over to Grand Avenue in the future, we are proposing a shared use path on the west side of 7th Avenue to help with connectivity over to other existing bicycle facilities. I'll talk a little bit about the medians that you see here, that kind of apricot color in the medians that is supposed to represent desert landscaping. So the future design of this should be very nice. And the darker gray color you'll see is a more standard concrete median. And you'll see these colors carried throughout the design. Next slide, please. All right, now we're going to start heading east. And now we're looking at Fillmore Street. So north is at the top of your screen. So this is showing the two-way bicycle facility on the south side of the street. It is next to the existing sidewalk. The bicycle facility is at the sidewalk level. You can see the concrete sort of medians proposed to separate the bikeway from the travel lanes. We're also using green pavement markings at driveways and intersections for the crossings. And we're proposing that these crossings are raised crossings. So that will maintain the bikeway at the same height throughout the corridor. And that raised crossing as well will provide a traffic calming benefit for cars crossing the bikeway at those intersections. Next slide, please. This is a photo example of a raised crossing with the green pavement markings at a driveway on a two-way bicycle facility to kind of illustrate what this looks like from the ground level. Next slide. Continuing east, we have a similar treatment at the next intersection with the raised crossing that continues. I'd also like to highlight the kind of median areas you see over on the left side of the screen. So this design is proposing floating bus islands. And when I'm talking about floating here, I don't mean above the ground. I just mean that it's separated from the main sidewalk. So these are sort of loading and unloading places for bus stops that will keep people getting on and off the bus separate from people riding bikes on the bikeway. So we have 3 of these along the corridor, and you see the first one on the design here. Here's an example image. The floating bus island is kind of just off center left of this image. Then you can see the two-way bike facility, and there's a marked pedestrian crossing provided from the sidewalk to the floating bus island to access the bus. One part of this design is that the buses will remain in the travel lane when they stop to load and unload passengers, but with the frequencies of the buses on these corridors, we don't anticipate traffic impacts due to the bus remaining in the travel lane. Continuing east along the corridor now, the raised intersection designs and floating bus islands continue here at the intersection with 4th Avenue. And continuing along again, the intersection design at 3rd Avenue is very similar. I do want to call to attention to sort of the center of the screen where we're not showing the full green pavement markings. This is a driveway that the city anticipates may close or no longer be needed after redevelopment. So we're proposing a more temporary treatment here. The landscaped buffer space will have a break in it, and we'll use rubber traffic stops as the separators in these locations. Eventually, we think that these driveways may be closed or not needed anymore, and at that point, the full separation will be provided. Okay, now we're heading towards the more eastern part of the corridor, and we're getting to some of our larger intersections. So we've had this continuous two-way bicycle facility on the south side of the street with the green pavement markings at the driveways and crossings. When we reach 1st Avenue, we have a traffic signal, and we will be providing a bikeway crossing through the intersection to connect to the two-way facility will continue on the east side of the intersection. At this intersection, we can, there will be some changes to the traffic signal timing. We'll want to do a protected bicycle crossing phase at this intersection to eliminate the conflicts with turning vehicles. This will have to be determined. The exact timing of this will be determined in a future phase, but we have confirmed that it should work with the light rail and the other traffic signal phases without too much delay. Okay, in our next section here from 1st Avenue to Central, this is one of the wider sections of the corridor. We have the bikeway continuing on the south side of the street, but due to the width and the needs sort of in this section here, we're able to maintain some on-street parking, including the existing ADA space on the south side of the street. Will provide a pedestrian crossing from that space to access the sidewalk. As we approach Central Avenue, the two-way bicycle facility will sort of merge with the sidewalk to be a wider shared use path type facility. We're doing that so that we can bring bicyclists down to that far southern crossing across Central Avenue. The location of this crossing is really ideal for the bike crossings here. We can have bicyclists cross with the through traffic at this intersection because Central is one-way northbound. We won't have any conflicts with turning vehicles here at this intersection. This design, this proposed design does affect a few of the palm trees on the site, but the Streets Department has been coordinating with the Parks Department, and we don't anticipate any issues there. Go to the next slide. And this is the final block that was added to this study area because of the opportunity at First Street. There will be a signal going in at First Street as part of a redevelopment project. So this was a great opportunity, as mentioned before, to continue the bike facility over to the existing Hans Hughes Memorial Bikeway on East Fillmore. So our design here is very similar still. We have another floating bus island here to accommodate the bus stop, the green pavement markings of the driveways, and then the intersection here with the signal is a good opportunity to transition from the two-way bike facility on the south side of the street to the existing one bike lane in each direction as you continue east. And because this is a signalized intersection, that will help facilitate the necessary two-stage crossing for any westbound bicyclists. So if you are a bicyclist traveling eastbound, this is a typical intersection and you continue straight through with the signal. If you're a bicycle traveling west, heading towards the left side of the screen, you would, with the signal, cross in one direction, cross west first, wait for the signal to change, and then cross south to access the two-way bike facility. And that's our last segment of this corridor. Heather, if you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. You've certainly supplied a lot of information to us tonight, and we may have to go back and reference a couple of those slides when we get to the Q&A. But at this point, I'd like to open the second poll, and I've just done that right now. And we're asking you here, thinking about how this proposal might serve the transportation needs of the greater downtown community, so you, as well as your friends and neighbors and fellow residents and business owners, rate your satisfaction with the project as it was presented. And if we can just go ahead and take a little bit of time to provide your input. The official poll will be available on the website about 20 minutes after this meeting is concluded. We'll upload that and you'll have an opportunity to fill that in as well. That poll will be open for a couple of weeks in English and Spanish. And we've got about 10 seconds left. And I get to peek here and I see that no one is unsatisfied. So that's very good. We have quite a few people very satisfied with the proposal. We have some people satisfied. I'm sure we have some questions, so we will go ahead and get to those. We had a number of people who signed up to speak, and I'm going to call on them as well. And Albert Granillo is our interpreter, and I'm just checking to see now, Albert, if you have any questions, if you can just let me know in the chat. If any of your listeners have questions, I will go ahead and call on you. The first person I would like to look for on the attendees who requested to speak is not in attendance tonight. Looks like there are a couple of people who are in attendance, and let me go ahead and unmute Laura. Laura, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
I'm guessing you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. I couldn't tell. I signed up to speak because I was totally unsure what you would be presenting tonight. But at this point, there's a lot to digest, and I don't actually have any questions. I just want to say I'm really pleased by the direction that the project looks to be taking. I think there's a lot of things that are going in the right way, and I would love for you to consider in the future extending the cycle track all the way to 7th Street, just staying on the south side of Fillmore. That would be amazing, so we didn't have to switch back over. But I know that's outside of the scope of this project, so I just want to thank you, and that's all I had to say.
All right, thank you very much, Nicole. Next, I'd like to ask if Patrick McDaniel would
I
like
turned
to
up my
speak.
sound.
Much for all the information that was presented tonight. Just to kind of echo the previous speaker, pretty much all of my questions were answered. I'm speaking on behalf of Phoenix Community Alliance. We really focus on downtown issues. But yeah, this is very, very great. This is great to see. I'm definitely going in the right direction. And like I said, this really aligns with our multimodal connectivity committee. So once again, just thank you so much. Design was great, and we look forward to the next stages of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And next, I'd like to call on Jamie. I don't see a mute unmute button. So Jamie, are you able to speak? That usually means that somebody doesn't have onboard speaker or mic. Yeah, Jamie, I can't mute or unmute you either. So let me move on, and perhaps you can put your question in the chat and we'll get people to answer, or you can call in. Either way, I see he's putting in the chat that he will call in. So next, I'd like to unmute Zachary, and after Zachary, I will unmute Ed, and then we'll go to some of the questions that were submitted. Go ahead, Zachary.
There we go. You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I bicycle along this route, and this looks fantastic. I really like the crossing, the improvements at 7th Avenue. I really like the elevated bikeway. I know that not all of us have been as thrilled with the flexible bollards, and I think that's an elegant solution. One thing that I couldn't tell is does the bikeway at the sidewalk elevation the whole way? It seems somewhere around 3rd or 4th Avenue, I could see the desert landscaping just to the north, and so I couldn't tell if it goes back to the roadway height there.
Wendy, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, here, for example.
Yeah, I think with the presence of the driveway here, and that we will need to keep that at the street level, and then we'll ramp back up at the intersection. So it's certainly all of the street crossings will be elevated, but the elevation of the bikeway may need to modulate a little bit to accommodate any vehicular crossings that are not major intersections.
Okay, but did I understand that further west of this, excuse me, the bikeway remains at the sidewalk level even between crossings? Is that correct?
I believe so. I think that when this is posted online, you'll be able to see a little bit easier some of the ramps kind of up and down along the way. They're shown as kind of small black boxes. Thank you for the cursor there. So you'll be able to see where the elevation might range.
And then a final comment / question is one thing that I thought maybe could be further improved is over at 1st Street. For the folks on bicycle who are heading west, you have to do the cross once, wait for the signal, cross again. I'm probably not patient enough to actually do that, and I'm wondering if it's possible to use a signal like the one at 3rd Avenue and Roosevelt, where the 3rd Avenue cycle track, if you're going southbound on 3rd Avenue and you get to Roosevelt, you cross over And so I'm wondering if it's possible to use the signal to not make it a double light crossing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand your question. Are you saying you would want to merge and make a left turn more like a vehicle?
Yeah, so if you were heading westbound here on a cycle, there would be a special light, a special signal where you could cross across the middle of the intersection with one light.
Hi, Wendy.
That's
I
the
can
way it's
answer
set
that
up.
question.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay.
Yeah, so as far as that would be something to take into consideration under design. So if that's an option that you'd prefer that type, definitely let us know as far as comments. At the moment in the concept design, it is kind of planned for this kind of quasi protected intersection is kind of what we call it. But that's something that as further design would be needed to evaluate whether or not the timing of that could accommodate in the signal.
Okay, well, maybe look to what you've already done on 3rd Avenue, because that's how it is designed there. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. And I'm going to go ahead to unmute Ed, and then I will unmute Nicole.
Hermes, good to see everybody. Ed Hermes, I work in the area, actually about to bike home from my office and bike on this stretch here shortly after this meeting, and a chair of the Vision Zero Street Safety Committee. There's a lot to like here in this design, and I really appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. I think that the elevated bikeway, the concrete barriers, physical barriers should be the norm in the city of Phoenix for bike lanes, and I really like a lot of this. I think as you continue to design this and implement this, making sure that it's physically impossible for cars to block the bike lane is really important. I think it achieves that, but just keep that in mind. We have a lot of issues on 3rd Avenue, on 5th Avenue, and just a lot of places in the city with cars parking illegally and blocking the bike lane. So just designing to prevent that from happening is really important. I think that does achieve it. So I really appreciate it and like a lot of this. I agree that the 2-stage crossing at 1st Street and Fillmore is awkward. I can see that being an issue. And, I think keeping that going at least to 3rd Street would be great. And then maybe thinking about a scramble at 3rd Street to really connect to that other north-south bike lane that's coming in, that at least I pray comes in on 3rd Street, would be a better solution to that, where we're really connecting the two major bikeways, east-west and north-south there at 3rd Street, maybe thinking about a scramble. But that I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and there's really a lot to like here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. With that, let me call on Nicole S., and I will find you and unmute you. You should be able to go ahead, Nicole. One more time, hang on. There you go. And after Nicole, I'll call on Jamie again.
So I mostly want to say thanks. I'm sure a lot of work went into this, and I think it looks, really high quality as far as bikeways do go. I'm excited that Phoenix is kind of aiming for this level of quality with the protected bike lane in the downtown area. And I wanted to ask, and maybe you have already considered this, there is, on Fillmore between 1st Street and Central, there's already a 2-way bike lane. And I think a good option to consider would be leaving it 2-way for that block and then merging the 2-way into the 1-way at Central rather than at 1st Street, only because Fillmore is offset at Central, and that intersection is pretty awkward to walk across as a pedestrian, and there might be an opportunity to, so the westbound bicyclist on the north side of Fillmore can just sort of continue straight across Central and there merge with the 2-way bike lane. And I think delineating that kind of gigantic intersection at Fillmore and Central could have benefits in and of itself. I think it is confusing for drivers when the east-west road is offset like that. So The only other thing, I don't know, I didn't see on the plan modal filters like to block cars from entering the entrances to the two-way bikeway. Maybe you guys already have those, but just a couple of nights ago, I witnessed a wrong way driver in the streetcar track lane on Central. So I think, you know, especially the elderly drivers, if there's a lane wide enough to fit their car, that is a hazard and they do accidentally drive in it. So I would like to see the modal filters wherever that's feasible.
Thank you very much. And with that, let me go find Jamie. He provided a call-in number. And now I don't see that he's on anymore. Refreshing, let's see. Maybe he had to drop off. I don't see him, but let me check in the comments. He said, I should be able to unmute, but if not, I just wanted to say thank you for not giving up on the intersection at 7th Avenue and Fillmore. So Wendy, thank you, your team and our staff for paying attention to that intersection. And Albert, did you have anyone who wished to speak? Oh, hang on. Yeah, actually, he said he's rejoined. I'm just trying to be fair to all the people that took time out of their day here. And when I refresh, I don't see his 602 number there. So I'm sorry, Jamie. Let me go ahead and move on to Richard. Let's see, Richard, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Hello. Good evening. Thank you all for your hard work on this. I attended the meeting in February and gave my opinions there. I am a resident a little further west of downtown, and I use this stretch every day. One thing that I would like you all to consider changing is actually putting a signal at 7th Ave and Fillmore. I cross that every day. In the summer, sometimes that signal takes 5 to 10 minutes to actually activate. And when you're standing there in the sun, getting beat on by the sun, it's intense and really unbearable. And for pedestrians, that's really, really bad. The Hawk, I think it's called a Hawks signal. It's not very effective. I noticed one person like crossing, but drivers do not respect it after that. And it's really dangerous for me crossing every day, almost every day on that. I really do like option C, but I would really like you all to consider actually putting signals at 7th Ave and Fillmore. Thank you for your hard work, and I am excited to see what else you guys come up with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. We have a couple of questions that people submitted.
May I respond for a second, Heather?
Sure, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And one thing that I forgot to mention on my slide, and we didn't see on the timeline, is with the proposed medians, like at the existing Hawk signal or a pedestrian hybrid beacon, the city is going to pursue a quick build at that intersection to sort of test this concept out. We hear your concerns. We did look at the full signal, and I hope that this is a way to test a concept, and if it doesn't work, then we move on to other options.
Thanks, Wendy. A couple of the submitted questions. I did hear from Albert that we didn't have any questions on the Spanish language line. So I'd like to move on to some of the submitted questions. There was an opportunity to submit questions at registration. So we had a question about if an in-field walk or bike audit was performed as part of this project.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. So we did do an in-person site visit back when we kicked off this project almost a year ago, last fall. My colleagues and I were there in person with several members from the city staff as well as transit. We walked the entire length of the corridor, and I know that our city project manager has been out on the corridor since then, kind of conducting informal observations as well.
Thank you, Wendy. We had a question also, if parking is removed, is there a conversation about creating parking passes for residents on the avenues north and south of Fillmore? That might be a Carl question, or a Ruben?
I can answer. Sorry, I can answer that one. As far as passes, whatnot for the area, no. So we did do quite a few studies ahead of time to kind of look at the overall parking in the area. And we did find that quite a few of the side streets did have excess parking availability for items. The parking passes or resident parking passes we've determined don't really work in the downtown area. There's just so many people that we'd hand out way more passes than what parking is available for. And so it is kind of parking on a first come, first served basis in those areas.
Thank you, Carl. A couple of the submitted questions, a couple more. If there is not southbound traffic on Central, why not have the cyclists flow with traffic across Fillmore? 90-degree turns are not as ideal as a cyclist, and it seems somewhat unnecessary given the one-way nature of Central Avenue. Can we have somebody address that, please?
I think one of the main reasons we wanted to use the existing pedestrian crossing, which I think we can all agree is awkward down there, is because of the light rail tracks and the angle that we want bicyclists to cross those tracks. We want them to be very perpendicular. So again, the kind of sharp turn is to make sure that that crossing of the tracks is safe. Kind of crossing more directly would put you at a more dangerous angle on your bicycle.
And staying with that theme, we had a question about asking you to explain a little bit more about the bike lanes switching sides, suggesting that maybe that's confusing and/or dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I think this happens in cities all over the country. You can get a two-way bicycle facility on parts of the corridor, but not other parts of the corridor. I think there's an issue a little bit further east of here with the number of driveways makes it much more challenging to provide a fully separated facility. So this does happen in other places, and certainly the future design of it will take some of these details into consideration, and I'm sure there'll need to be an educational component as well, kind of teaching people how to cross this intersection safely.
Thank you, Wendy. There was a question if we can look again at the intersection of 7th Avenue. The questioner says, currently there's a utility box for the apartment building that results in an overly angular sidewalk, which is tough to navigate on a bike when attempting to get to the Hawk.
Is that something we would look at in future design phases to make sure that it's easy to navigate from the bikeway to the crossing?
Yes, so that's a detail that would be part of future design and kind of final design to make sure that, hey, what is it we can do? Is there stuff we could do? What kind of utilities actually in the way? But that would be something that would be looked at. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you, Carl. Another question that may have been answered earlier was about the intersection of First Street and Fillmore, about whether that could be converted to a scramble or an all-way crossing so that westbound travelers don't have to make the two-stage turn.
I can answer that one. So again, that would be something that's evaluated in further design. This is really in the conceptual level, and conceptually, this is the direction that we looked at. There's not enough detail to know for sure, but that's something that we can look at in the review and final design.
Thank you, Carl. And that comes to the end of our submitted questions and the end of our list of people who wish to speak. We do have the chat saved, so we can share that, any comments or information that's submitted via chat with the project team. And with that, you can see this timeline that we have here for the initial outreach that we did and our second public meeting tonight. Again, we're hoping to complete this study in early 2025 and seek funding to enter the design phase. As Wendy mentioned, that we are seeking to do that quick build at 7th Avenue, possibly as soon as 2025, to address the concerns that this very community and the people on here tonight brought to our attention regarding crossing 7th Avenue. And with that, Ruben, do you have any final remarks? We'll have that survey up in about a half an hour, and you'll be able to take the survey through November 24th. This recording will be uploaded to the website by mid next week. And there's a comment line. I introduced Albert Granillo, our interpreter. He is indeed the focal point for questions or comments. And with that, Ruben.
I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to be part of this presentation and giving us your feedback for us to provide the best or the most, wanted or desired bicycle facility to serve you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you all for your time this evening. We appreciate the time you've spent with us and the input and constructive comments and questions that brought us to this design. And we thank you for participating tonight. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.